Hi, I'm Ariane, and this is what I read in the second half of February. I also have a video for the first half of February, so I'll link that down below. But first, before we start, I actually want to start off with everything I DNF'd in February, which counts from the beginning of February, like in all of February. So the first book I DNF'd was All the Hidden Paths by Foz Meadows, which is the second in the Tithonay series, duology. It's just a duology, but I did DNF it. So I read the first one, A Strange and Stubborn Endurance, and I enjoyed some of it. There were definitely parts that I liked. I did read all of it, so I obviously didn't hate it, but I felt very very unsatisfied about the emotional part it gave, and like the emotional satisfaction. It did not give you emotional satisfaction at all, and so I wanted to read the second one for the reason that I kind of was hoping it would give me some emotional satisfaction. And I very quickly understood that A, it wasn't going to do that, and B, eh, every few pages was sex, and that's just not something I'm interested in reading personally. So I DNF'd it. Second book I DNF'd was Steadfast by Mercedes Laquet. This was extremely disappointing because the reason I DNF'd it was built on a racist trope. Don't really have to explain more than that. Third book I DNF was The Nest. I can't remember by who. I listened to like 5 or 10 minutes of the audiobook and then I DNF'd it. But what's interesting about this is I might not have DNF'd it if it were a physical book. So the reason I DNF'd it was I just couldn't stand listening to the main character, not the narrator. The narrator was fine, but the way she was like speaking, like I looked in the mirror and then I saw my brown hair and my nose, whatever. I saw my friend and this is the way she looked. I hate those popular girls. I literally had to look to see if it was actually published in 2022 just to check. But so I did enjoy the prologue, which was from the villain's perspective. So I think if this was a physical book, I definitely have continued reading. I don't know if I wouldn't have DNF'd it totally, after all, because I don't know what's the continuation of the book. But I do think that if it were a physical book, I would have been able to get past the way the main character was speaking and continue reading. But as it is, I DNF'd it 5-10 minutes in, something like that. The fourth book I DNF'd was Selected Poems of Emily Dickinson. And so this one, so I enjoyed a lot of the poems, and then I got to the second half of the book, and all the poems are basically about suicide and like how she wants to commit suicide. And I just it's not something I'm interested in reading. I can understand why people would want to read it. Not for me. And so now we get to the books I read in the second half of February. I probably should have divided February into the 1st to the 14th and the 15th to the 28th, but I divided into the 1st and 15th. So this is books I finished from the 16th to the 28th of February. So the first book I finished was Dinner for Vampires, Life in a Cult TV Show, well, also in an actual cult, by Bethany Joy Lenz. This is a memoir about an actor who ended up in a cult while she was acting, and it's basically about how she ended up in the cult and how she got out. And so I didn't really like the first 2/3 of the book, which were her childhood and how she ended up in the cult, but I actually really liked the last third of the book, which was how she got out of the cult and like everything she had to do, because like I think a lot of the times when we talk about cults, we talk about when people get into the cult, we talk about what happens in the cult, and then and then if they manage to survive and realize what's happening is shit, then we're like, and yay, they realized what happened and they got out. And she actually talks about this whole legal process that she had to go through. She had a daughter with the son of the cult founder who I think is still very much in the cult today, and she like had to fight to get custody of her. The cult stole a ton of money from her, and she had to like figure out what to do with that. And I thought that part was very interesting. but I found the first 2/3 kind of boring. I wasn't so interested in them. I don't know why exactly. I feel like I should have been. I just wasn't. Maybe it was the writing. Next book I read was The Islands of Chaldea by Diana Wynne Jones and Ursula Jones. So this book was started by Diana Wynne Jones and then she passed away. And her sister finished it. Um, it's not my favorite Diana Wynne Jones, but I did like it. Like it was okay, it was enjoyable. I couldn't tell where her sister started writing, but there were definitely some things I was like, oh, this isn't a Diana Wynne Jones thing to have done. It wasn't that I disliked them. I actually quite enjoyed them. It just was like, oh, this isn't a Diana Wynne Jones thing to have done. She wouldn't have written this because like I've just read so many of her books that I already know. Um, but they were good, and her sister's definitely a good writer. Apparently, she also writes. I just never heard of her in the capacity of a writer. So this book is about this girl who is the heir to this magic family, but she doesn't have magic. She's supposed to like get this magic on her 13th birthday, I believe, but the ritual, she fails the ritual. And they have been in a ceasefire with another country for a long time. There are 4 islands, each one is a country. And so 3 of the islands, including hers, have been in ceasefire with another island ever since she was little. So what happened when she was little is that they basically kidnapped the prince's son and then made the king's son, sorry, the prince, and then made it an impenetrable barrier. And she and her aunt and a few other people are sent to like go through all the islands and then get through the impenetrable barrier. I really like the ending actually. Like the climatic scene, I thought it was really good and well done. Anyways, the next book I read was High Time for Heroes by Mary Pope Osborne. I actually have a reading blog for this, so I will also link that down below. Oh, and it's illustrated by Salvatore Murdoka. And this one is a Magic Treehouse book. So in the Magic Treehouse book, you have these 2 siblings, Jack and Annie, who find this magic treehouse, which has books in it. And when they point to the book and say, I want to go there, the book will take them there. I wish I could go there. And every 4 books is a different adventure. So in this one, they have to go. So this is the 3rd book of 4, and they have to go and find, in these 4 books, they have to go and find someone great. And in this one, they meet Florence Nightingale. I thought it was okay. It wasn't my favorite Magic Treehouse book. I didn't dislike it. I just thought it took a long time to get to the point, which is weird because 120 pages, but so many of those pages were like them just running around doing nothing, like just running around and talking to people. Not even they go to Egypt and not even seeing Egypt. When the part where they went to see Egypt and got into adventures and that, I did enjoy. I just thought it took a long time, longer than it should have to get there. Then the next book I read was Sorcery and Cecilia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot by Patricia C. Reed and Caroline Sturvermeer. So this one, I liked it so much. So this is a Regency fantasy novel. It's epistolary. So basically you have these 2 cousins who are best friends, and one has gone to London to debut, and the other is stuck in their country home. And then and they're just writing to each other, and these weird magical things start to happen, and they get like involved in this really weird conspiracy. And one of the things I liked actually is how small it is. Like, I wouldn't have minded if it was like saving all of England or something like that, but I did, and I would have liked that as well, but I also liked how small it was. It was very fun, and I just loved this book so much. The only complaint I would have is that the 2 characters sounded very similar to each other, which can happen in epistolary novels when you have 2 authors, each one writing 1 character. But, oh my god, it was so good. I definitely recommend you should read this book. So the next book, or rather comic I read, is Shazam and the Seven Magic Kingdoms, number 5, by Geoff Johns and Marco Santucci, the people who wrote it. I'm not going to have like all the people who drew it and colored it, because I don't remember it, I don't have it written down. So Shazam and the Seven Magic Kingdoms, if you don't know, Shazam is a superhero who is a 12-year-old foster kid who can turn into an adult superhero with lightning powers. And he makes all his faster siblings also superheroes. So in this one, that's already established, and they go to their secret superhero hideout and find these 7 magic lads, and they get stuck in them. And meanwhile, you have 2 different villains who are plotting against each other and against the kids who don't know it at all. And it's super fun. And this one, like, it's definitely comics made for kids, but it was so creepy. Like, it was just so good. Especially the Animal Kingdom was so creepy. Like, they're this fascist kingdom, and it's written so horribly well. The next one I read was The Tyrant's Tomb by Rick Riordan. This is I was rereading the Apollo series because I was reading them as they came out, and then Tyrant's Tomb came out, and I wasn't able to get to it because of long hold lines, long wait list lines, I don't know. But and then I never read it. So I decided to start rereading them, and so this was my first time reading this. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Like, okay, so how I feel about it is I enjoyed it like I usually enjoy Rick Riordan's writing. It really, really, really bothered me the way they spoke about Rome. So in this book, Apollo and his friends, Apollo is the main character, are in the Camp Jupiter, which is where all the Roman demigods are, and they're fighting against these evil Roman emperors, and they're like, for Rome! And I'm like, no. And they're like, Roman glory and that. I'm like, would you talk about Nazi glory? Okay, Rome was a horrible empire, who murdered and exiled my people, who still have a gate up in Italy of exactly how they did that. Why are we talking about Roman glory? And that really, obviously, it put a pall over the book for me because obviously, and yeah, and generally, I I know that I'm getting into reading a book with Greek and Roman demigods, with Greek and Roman gods, and those are countries that really hurt my people. But there's a difference between reading empires that really hurt my people. There's a difference between reading that and then having Roman glory. Oh, really? No, I really did not like that. But I am currently reading the last book in the series. Okay, then the next book I read was Made Hard Work, Low Pay, and a Mother's Will to Survive by Stephanie Land. This is a memoir by a woman is who was a single mother working as a maid. And I didn't like it. Sorry, but I didn't. So I just thought it was not well written, which was made more ironic by the fact that she keeps on saying that she's a good writer. I believe that I do believe that there are people who would think that she's a good writer and enjoy her books. I thought it was very kishkush balabush. It was all a mishmash. You have one like she's writing about her experience as a maid, but it's not any chronological order, and so it makes it hard to understand. And she also purposely left stuff out, which I can understand. She doesn't want to tell everything about her life. She wants to control it. But it made it way less enjoyable, and I think if she didn't want to put those things in, she should have written an essay book instead of a whole memoir, especially when she's doing all this mixing up of the times and she's not keeping it chronological. That's just my opinion. I didn't like it. And I was disappointed because I waited because I was really excited about it after watching the Netflix series, and I thought I was going to really enjoy it, and then I didn't. And next book was also a disappointment. This was Pipsqueak, Slowpokes, and Snickers by Melissa Stewart. Illustrated by, I forget who. So Melissa Stewart is a nonfiction picture writer, science nonfiction, and I've read quite a lot of her work, and I really enjoy it. This one was just kind of, it was moralizing. Yes, it was nonfiction about animals that are not usually admired. They're not the big lions, etc., but it very much moralized to you as you were reading it, and I didn't like it. There was a 2-page spread I liked, which had a bunch of stinky animals, including the hoatzin, so which is a bird that is very cool. So I liked those 2 pages, and I didn't really like the rest of the book. Continue on with picture books. I read Follow Chester: How a College Football Team. Wait, what's it called? Sorry. Follow Chester: A College Football Team Fights Racism and Makes History by Gloria Repush Churchill. And again, I forgot who the illustrator is. Sorry. I did like this one. I thought it was very well written. I enjoyed the illustrations. They weren't like my favorite in the world, but I didn't dislike them. Definitely liked them. And so I was kind of disappointed when I read the author's note and saw that she made up quite a lot of, not everything, but she didn't make up, she made up this very big plot point. But then I did read that she had talked to Chester, who is the star of this book, and he unfortunately passed away before she was able to publish it, but his family did, finished writing the book, but his family do like it. So that did make up for it. But I was a little disappointed by that. So what is this book? So this book is about the first non-segregated football team to play in the segregated South. So the person who was black on this team was Chester. I forgot his name, but I'm sure you can look it up very easily. And I did look him up, and turns out he also worked on Sesame Street, which is super cool. The next book I read is also a picture book, and it is I Am a Cat by Galia Bernstein. And this was so good. It was like the perfect picture book. The pictures were perfect. The story was perfect. The rhythm of the words was perfect. The choices of words were perfect. It was the perfect picture book. And it's about a cat who goes to all the big cats and it's like, I'm a cat too. And they're like, no, you're not. Gives all these reasons why he's not. And it sounds like it would be very moralizing, but it's not. And it's so good. If you have like any little kids in your life, you have to check this out. If you teach kindergarten, first grade, second grade, even third grade, you need this. Nobody's sponsoring me. I just really like the book that much. The next book I read in February was The Orphan by Anthony L. Mana and Suda Mitakidu. So this is a retelling of the Greek version of the Cinderella story. So it's actually, they took two versions and they put it together and they emphasize some elements and de-emphasize others. I like that. I thought the writing was very good. However, I hated the illustrations. Well, hated is a strong word. I didn't hate them. I'll save that for something else, not in this video. But I highly disliked the illustrations. I thought they were ugly. But I did like the writing. The next book I read is the last picture book I read in February, and that is The Ring Bearer by Floyd Cooper. I was really excited for this one because on the cover, the illustrations look so wonderful and exactly what I remembered, like from all the picture books that were coming out in my childhood. And I don't know if it's because I read it digitally and not in a real book, but I was kind of disappointed with them. But I really like the story. So this story is about a boy who his mother is getting married, and he obviously a little kid, and he is the ring bearer, and he's really anxious about also bearing the ring and also like having this new family. Like he does know and like his mom's new husband and his daughter, but he's like still anxious about it. And it's just such a cute story. And I thought it was really well done at like relieving his anxiety without being like over the top about it, because like I don't know, like the thing that happened to relieve his anxiety, it was like it wasn't that he I just thought it was like it wasn't like this big event. At least it felt like to me. However, I would ask little kids what they felt about it before totally saying yes on that, because obviously as an adult, there are plenty of things that don't feel like a big event to me that do feel that way to little kids. And also, I'm not Christian. I didn't grow up in any Christian society. So, and this event does have to do with him being the ring bearer, which is not something that exists in Jewish weddings. So, who knows? Maybe it is some very big event. I'm just unaware of it. The last book I read in February was Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I have a reading vlog also where I read this, which I will link down below. And I love this book. Wait, it's right here. This is about Clara, who is a robot, an AI, and she is an artificial friend, and these robots are made to be friends of teenagers, sci-fi society. And it just follows her as she is botched by a teenager and just like her life with that teenager, like the first year, and it's so good. It very interesting. My one complaint is that I really think that this book could have been better with some more world building, 20, 30 pages more, and we would have had world building that would have helped us actually understand this, also the world, but also the message of the book more. And that was my opinions on Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. So those are all the books I read in February. So now let's review the series I read. Um, so in February, I started out with 72 series currently reading, and I finished with 71 series currently reading. So, I began 2 series. Um, so I began the, oh no, what's it called? The Enchanted Chocolate Pot. Cecilia and Sorcery of the Enchanted Chocolate Pot was the first of a trilogy. And the other series I began, give me a second. What was it? Oh, it could be up. Oh, I also read in February The Wishing Spell, which is the first book of a quintology, I believe. Then, whoops, totally went out of that. I continued 5 series. So just so you know, I count every book in a continuation of a series as a continued series, even if I read 2 books in that series. So in the same month. So I continued the Elemental Magician series by Mercedes Laquet by reading Unnatural Issue. I continued the the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan by reading both The Burning Maze and The Tyrant's Tomb. I continued Magic Treehouse Missions series by reading High Times for Hero, and I continued Shazam and Seven Magic Kingdoms by reading Seven Magic Lands, by reading issue number 5. I caught up on Zero series. I DNF'd one series, which was the Tiff and I duology. I completed one series, which was the Love Boat series by, what's her face? Abigail Hing-Wen. I only read the first and third books. I didn't read the second book, but I'm not interested in it, so obviously I'm counting that series as completed. And that is everything that I read in the second half of February, plus everything I DNF'd in all of February, plus my series wrap-up. Thank you for watching.